No pressure.
Thanks so much for coming.
I know, thanks for having us.
Real excited about today.
Well, we're really excited to be able to sit here and talk to you guys. So I guess we'll start with a big question, which is what made you decide that season 3 was the end?
Well, when we started out, I was originally doing a pitch for like about 100 episodes, and so in some ways we had material that stretched not quite to the end, but there had definitely been an idea of a much larger arc, and then the order for the first season became the 36 episodes, and so it was like, well, there's Act 1. So we had kind of like an Act 2 and an Act 3 in sketchy terms, but still, so it seems reasonable as an arc.
Absolutely. And I think when we talked with our partners and the brand, it seemed like the right amount of seasons to do, because for them, obviously, it's a really important investment. But it's even creatively, like we wouldn't want to keep spinning our wheels and like stretching again. And it was really lovely to be able to write towards a conclusion this year. Just knowing exactly
where it was going to go.
Yeah, and it's less about withholding for the next time. It's like we know what to dole out at the stage.
Laura's dad specifically states that she's a lesbian, so why was it important for her to explicitly have that label?
Well, that actually was a lot of back and forth between myself and Ellen, who's our social media and story editor, and Steph, because one of the things that, like one of the projects of the piece was very much to put lesbians and LGBTQ characters into core lead positions and not make them explain themselves, like not make them identify themselves, because in our everyday conversations, we don't. But at the same time, I was getting a lot of feedback from Ellen that there was a lot of desire for this in the fandom. And so, like, that again, it kind of like you have your desire as a writer for naturalistic dialogue, wherein we don't necessarily identify ourselves, versus what the fandom wants. And this is kind of our last chance to, like, do what the fandom wants. So sort of a wonderful opportunity presented itself with Laura's dad, because where internal characters, it would have felt
come up
so happy to try to like shove it in somehow. But
it really had to be Sherman.
But Sherman gives us that outside voice that allows us to, and I think certainly writing it, like Laura was one of the characters who, like she's the kind of person who seems to me to be very like, she has set categories for herself, and in terms of like, she is monogamous, she is a lesbian, like that felt very, very true to her, so it didn't feel like there was like a problematic gap between the naming and the character, especially around Laura.
And I would add that it really was important for us and fun, especially in the first 2 seasons, to really kind of let them play in their own world and not. And we've talked about this at length, but like not making it a coming out narrative, which I myself as a queer woman have seen. So it was nice to kind of, like you said, not be side character gay, but like in the lead driving force position. But at the same time, in the 3rd season, it really was the right time to be more explicit. And I think we see, especially in digital, I think it's sometimes you really have to be a little more explicit on the nose and state it so that it's canon on screen as well as canon elsewhere.
It was so well done.
Well, thank you.
I laughed for like a minute straight.
And also, the last thing that I really found really funny is when Sherman does the same thing with Lofts pronouns, so we have that conversation on screen, and what I found so touching and universally true is that he says, if I can deal with vampires, whatever, this is no problem at all, which really should be something that we should all kind of agree with, It's like, why are you focused on, why is this bothering you so much?
Exactly.
So I think it's a really apt metaphor for identity as well.
Yeah, and that was really important in the writing of that. Like, I didn't want to just be saying, like, we're just saying this so we can have a name out there. Like, it was very important to integrate each of those sort of like announcements, if you're thinking of them that way, as part of Sherman's dialogue and part of something he's trying to achieve, right?
Part of his points,
yeah.
You mentioned that it was something that the fandom wanted. In being like a web series, you kind of have a different relationship with fandom than like a show or a movie. Do you ever feel like pressure to cow to what fandom wants, or are you very more like, no, this is our vision and we're sticking to it? And
It's sort of a little bit of both. Like for myself, I know I stay, like Steph and Ellen are really, really engaged, and I do keep like a little bit further back, partially just because I'm not great on Twitter, but also partially because sometimes you are going to have to do things that, you know, you can please some of the people some of the time, but not all of them all the time. So because I'm going to have to do something maybe they're not going to like, it's good to sort of step back and be like, well, maybe that's my role in this. And there are things that shift because you get feedback and you can hear for yourself that this is good feedback.
Absolutely.
This is accurate and we want to engage with it and respond to it. But you get a lot of feedback too where you're just like, that's not really a concern for us right now. We got a nice solid arc going.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. We'll put it aside. And to add to that point, I think you said it perfectly well. I think for us, we got so much great feedback after season 2, some which was really pointed, and a lot of people, you know, wanted to see some things change or revert back, but it was less about acquiescing to it and applying what they said. It was a lot of things that we agreed with. We're like, yeah, there were too many bodies in some episodes of season 2. So for us, from a production standpoint, and at the same time, the writing standpoint, just knowing who's in your scene and why, and, you know, the intimate nature of the show, I think we took all the feedback that we personally believed in and ran with it.
That's how you work actually a lot in playwriting, is you get feedback and you don't necessarily take the feedback itself, but from what's returned to you, you can learn so much about what the next step is.
Absolutely. And like when people say when you're having notes with networks and studios and whatnot, sometimes you're not sure, you don't agree with what they're saying on face value, but like what's the note behind the note, right? What's niggling them? Even if they can't explain it properly, like I want to understand where you're coming from, because if it's bumping you and if it's bumping a large section of fans, then we need to understand why, you know, and get to it. Which is different than something that's necessary as part of it, right? As setup.
And now, what have you found are some of the perks, you know, having the show on YouTube versus like a traditional television network?
That's going to be you.
Nothing geoblocked, honestly, it's definitely, I think when we look at, I think we're more aligned with Netflix and Amazon Prime, for instance, because not being geoblocked allows us to only focus on interest-based groups. So it's not about, people ask me like, what's the age group of Carmilla? And I'm like, yeah, there's definitely a younger subsection, but it's really about interest and like, I want to see these queer characters. I want to see this type of story and tone. So when we do our outreach, and Carrie's someone who leads it, it's about connecting to these groups and these fandoms that exist worldwide and not about broader demographics. Whenever we work sometimes with networks, there's always a push to go broad, and being on YouTube and being allowed to go much nicher is really freeing. And not being geoblocked, you know? A lot of Brazilians.
Perry as the dean, was she always intended to be possessed in season 1, or was this something decided after season 2 was picked up?
There was always. Can I
go for it.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
go for it, yeah.
So there was always going to be someone who was possessed and became the dean. When we started writing season 2, there was actually like for myself, I think I put way too many bodies on the board. So there was actually, Laura was going to have an intern for her little news program.
Intern Jenny.
And intern Jenny was going to be the one who had been possessed. And then we got through that first draft, and it was just like, holy crap, what was I thinking? There are so many people in this, and we have such a small time. So some things got shifted around, and that role, when we actually looked at it, it was a really great fit for Perry. Yeah, exactly. And Annie, of course, is also a stellar actress, and you want to like use when you have actresses like those on the board, you're like, we want to give you more to do rather than less. So that it dovetailed neatly, and then so in some ways the Perry arc became like a little bit. It kind of dovetailed into the intern Jenny arc.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I said, it worked thematically for Perry because she was getting frustrated with this vampire situations, living under the floorboards. So she would get a little more pressed, which worked with the dean's goals.
Yes.
You know. So.
My favorite thing about that actually was that Perry's sort of like her tendency to want to clean things just sort of dovetailed perfectly with like, this is the dean's apartment, and they're getting crap all over her rug.
She's very annoyed, yeah.
It's the little things.
Okay, so you've talked a little bit about your social media outreach and the way that this whole show has always been extremely transmedia. It's always been really interesting to watch the show evolve on Twitter, and this year has been sort of like even bigger because you've added the podcast and all this other stuff that's happening at the same time. It's almost too much to keep track of. But since this is the last season and you've created this really rich world of Carmilla and her past, and we learn more about the Dean this year, and there's all these different societies at Silas, do you have any intention of like expanding on the world of Carmilla after the show ends? Like, is there going to be a comic book or another web series or a movie? We're talking about, let's have a Carmilla opera.
Oh, an opera. Musical You know, Spencer always jokes that he would love to do like Rocky Horror style tour. I would love that too. That's not in the cards.
I mean, it's a large world. At present, we're thinking this is the arc. Like for the web series, it's a nice contained conclusion. But it is a big world, and certainly it would be lovely.
You guys are staying for the panel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I have a question.
Do you think you could survive at Silas?
No, I couldn't. Absolutely not.
I don't know. I think one of the things you do as a writer is you build worlds that you like, but that also would challenge you. And really, when I think of myself at Silas, I could see myself like dirty and scrambling through the psychology.
Robespierre, I definitely wouldn't take as many risks as Laura, that's for sure. You know, it's funny. It often comes up. People ask us, why don't they just leave Silas? Despite the times that they tried. And I was like, well, we never established that all the other universes aren't like Silas. Like, it could be crazy everywhere, you know?
That's true. The Silas account does frequently say things like, just like any other prestigious institution.
Yeah,
and so for all we know, that entire world, you know, you have the battle to the death for tenure at Princeton too.
Yeah. Betty is, battling some demons over there.
Season 3 is being released in acts. So from your perspective, how do you think that changes the viewing experience?
That's interesting. I'd like to think to a certain extent it doesn't, because like it's still written in these little episodes, and the episodes still move to arcs, but at the same time I think it does let you binge a whole section to like one of the big cliffhangers as opposed to like relying upon the little hooks.
There's less pressure on the little hooks.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I think during the development process, it also, I think it removes the pressure on some of the episodes that happen in the same in-universe scripting. So if you're watching, for instance, episodes 301 to 306 happen on the same night. So if you're watching those for 2 months, you're like, can we just like move faster this time? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, of course, would it be nice to have 36 or more script days? We can. There's also production reality to why certain episodes have to happen on the same script day. You know, more costume changes, this, more that. So I was really excited for it. I think it was important in the first 2 seasons to go 2 a week, although maybe 3 a week would have been great. I think for other shows we found that works really well. But for this, it just allowed us to really, I don't know, I just love it myself, so I'm really happy we did that. And not just in one, because you do have like 3 premieres essentially.
Yeah, which is exciting. Yeah, and it does, I mean, when you write something that's got an arc, because it's a lot like actually writing a tiny feature with a lot of little hooks inside of it, and so breaking it into an Act 1, an Act 2, and an Act 3 actually kind of complements that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you guys have been with these characters for quite some time now. I mean, knowing them, knowing their little, tics and just everything about them, who would you choose to play? And does it represent your personality, or why would you choose them?
I think you should answer that first, because my answer is always kind of the writer cop-out answer.
I would love, and this is not at all because I can do it, but I would love to play the Dean, because like, how fun would that be? Just so perfect. And that's it.
That's excellent. I kind of play them all. Like, basically at home, in my pajamas, with my laptop, I just sort of rattle around with all these characters in my head, and it's always exciting to find the things that they'll say when you've kind of pulled that on. So, like, I don't know if you can choose, right? It's hard to be like, you love them all in their own particular ways. Some of them, you have to have a little bit more tolerance for, but others are yeah.
The series is riddled in pop culture and Harry Potter references, but since it goes so quickly so often, it can be easy to miss. What are some of the references Green Puffs might have overlooked?
Oh, that's a great question.
Well, I think like I try to layer in as many references as possible. So I mean, there's a lot of Shakespeare in Act 2, and there's little bits of Shakespeare I think even in this.
Coming up in Act 3, there's some.
Yeah. There's a Borges short story that gets a shout out. That's already kind of had a shout out, and we'll get another one.
Oh, it's coming up. Yeah, we have to apply for clearance for that one sentence.
Oh my gosh, you did? I was so sure that was in public domain by now. Sorry. Okay.
No, the estate of Borges. We're like, hi, we'd like to use these 3 words to the editor. We're like, in one. We're like, in a web series.
That's awesome. I totally didn't know that. I was thinking it was in public domain.
I thought so too, but then the clearance company applied it for us. Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, so there's that. I'd actually, honestly, I'd have to look through the script because, like, in general, I'm trying to make sure that because Laura in particular speaks in a very referential way, that like I hit like maybe 3 good references per episode.
Oh, yeah.
So that means that there's a lot.
And a lot of Angel season. Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed. There's one scene where there's like almost 3 lines that are very close.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Yeah.
And sometimes, I guess, I unintentionally lift a good chunk of Joss Whedon. There we are.
Someone made like a side-by-side gift comparison, and I was like, cool.
Nice.
No, I was
Yeah, that was unintentional, I think. Sorry, I don't have them on the top of my head right now.
The one Willow line in Act 1 caused my brain to explode. But so I guess the big. Look at my face. You know this face.
Oh my goodness!
I have faces too.
I was messaging with my friend like I don't know what this is. It's bothering me. But anyway, so I guess the big elephant in the room at this point is next week is the final act. So either what can you tell us, or what are you most excited about, or both?
Yeah. So I continue to say, let me answer that with the GIF.
Okay.
That's what you're gonna get.
Okay. Isn't that? You can't top that. It says everything and it says nothing. What I'll say is that, as I'm sure you know, we have shown some clips from Act 3 in the trailer, like the full season trailer, so you see that there's a different location, there's a different visual style there that it was so exciting to shoot. It was stressful but really fun. I just love it. I'm really excited to get to those episodes. And other things I'm excited about, definitely.
Yes, they're exciting.
Yeah.
What is it like to see your writing come to life, like during table reads? Because I would geek out all the time.
We wish we had our own set.
And you do. This one, I'm a little bit removed from it because I write remotely in Vancouver, and then it all goes away and kind of magically comes to life. But there's almost always for me sort of a sense of like when you see it come back of, oh my god, they're gonna figure out I made this all up.
So at the end of the day, it's just a couple people, you know, talking and you writing. It's one person. And then tomorrow we had a secondary writer who wrote 5 episodes before Jordan did her pass on them. But then you have hundreds of thousands of people analyzing. So really, the brain trust is very different. They're going to find things that we didn't think about. And that's just the nature of TV, you know.
The analysis is amazing and actually really flattering because we write these fast. And Tamara was excellent, actually. Like, she came into our little writer's room as a story editor, and like we really sort of kicked the tires of what I was bringing in for season 3. And yeah, she was terrific.
And I think we all challenge each other too.
Yeah,
push back and forth, and it makes for
a stronger piece. Like that was definitely one of the highlights of the process for me for season 3. And now I'm forgetting what I was going to say. So,
what are you excited about in the 3rd act? I'm like so many things, but these are all going to go up before the 3rd act, right? So I can't say that.
Yeah. I feel like once you want to talk about things, you're like, oh no, come dangerously close to specifics.
What's the funniest fandom meme that you guys have seen?
Oh, I know.
Oh my gosh.
Fairy.
Oh yes, the evil fairy thing. I should have known what I was letting myself in for when I did that, but I didn't. No, I want to say, actually, you know what? I remembered what I was going to say about the other one, which is what really kills me are like the huge, long, like concordance style analysis pieces, because they're great. They'll be like, oh my god, they got it, they got it, they got it. They're going to know everything, right? And then suddenly it veers off.